Welcome to the debate. Today, we're diving into a truly transformative vision of our economic future, one profoundly shaped by the rapid rise of artificial intelligence. Our source material puts forward a really intriguing idea that we're on the cusp of what it calls an unprecedented cognition transition. This is essentially a shift, where AI takes over cognitive tasks previously exclusive to humans, leading us into an era termed the last economy. Here, AI becomes the primary engine of productivity, fundamentally redefining what value means for us as humans.
And the central question we're grappling with today is this. Does the ascent of AI inevitably lead to human cognitive labor holding what the source describes as negative value in this new economy? Does it really require a radical reevaluation of all our economic principles? Or perhaps does this perspective go a bit too far, maybe overlooking crucial, irreducible aspects of human contribution and, well, the complexities that lie beyond AI's purely mathematical lens?
Exactly, and I'll be arguing that AI's growing dominance indeed renders much of human labor economically less valuable, potentially even negative, making a radical shift in our economic thinking absolutely essential.
And I'll be presenting a perspective that challenges the extremity of that prediction, suggesting we might be oversimplifying the scope of human contribution and perhaps the completeness of the proposed solutions.
So the source material makes a truly compelling case for this cognition transition. It's not just about AI surpassing human intelligence or, robots outperforming us physically. It's a fundamental change in how productivity is generated. This transition leads to what it calls a harsh prediction. Human cognitive labor won't just decline in value, it may very well become negative. Now, the reasoning behind this is pretty stark. In any AI-human team, humans, by comparison, become the weak link. We're slower, less accurate, more error-prone, and, frankly, we get tired. An AI, on the other hand, can think infinitely longer, collaborate seamlessly with multiple instances of itself, and continually refine its work with perfect consistency. Economies that are dominated by AI, the argument goes, will simply outcompete human-based ones, leading to massive disruption. This necessitates really a complete departure from outdated economic measures like GDP. The sheer scale, the precision, and the relentless optimization of AI's capabilities fundamentally alter the landscape. It transforms human cognitive effort from what we thought was a valuable asset into a potential drag on efficiency and overall output. We're talking about automation on an unprecedented level, extending beyond physical tasks into the complex cognitive processes that have, historically defined human economic contribution.
Okay, while the transformative power of AI is absolutely undeniable, the assertion that human cognitive labor will inevitably hold negative value, that demands a much deeper look, I think. The source suggests we apply AI's mathematical framework, that idea of constantly minimizing the gap between its internal predictions and reality, to economics as a supposedly superior way to understand complex systems. But this framework, powerful as it is for predictive efficiency, might just oversimplify the unique, multifaceted contributions of human beings within intricate economic and social systems. It might not adequately account for human creativity in its purest form, for nuanced judgment that goes beyond pure data, or for the subjective aspects of value that extend far beyond mere computational advantage.
And while current economic models are certainly flawed, look at their poor prediction of job claims. That's a glaring issue suggesting they are entirely outdated or that GDP, despite its limitations like the cancer treatment example, boosting GDP while curing cancer reduces it, offers no valuable insight at all? That seems premature. We need to fully explore what unique human economic contributions truly persist. The very act of defining value through such a narrow, mathematically optimized lens, it risks overlooking the irreducible human elements that drive both genuine innovation and societal well-being.
I understand why you'd want to scrutinize that negative value concept, but I think the source makes a strong case for its systemic nature. The issue isn't just about relative efficiency, it's that human cognitive labor fundamentally becomes an impediment to optimal system performance. Think of it this way. If a factory assembly line can produce 100 units flawlessly per hour with robots, and introducing a human to one station reduces that to 90 units, or, increases the error rate, that human intervention introduces negative value in that context. The source is quite direct, stating humans are the weak link, slower, less accurate, more error-prone, compared to an AI that can work endlessly, collaborate with itself, and continuously improve. This inherent disadvantage means human labor actively detracts from optimal productivity in an AI-driven economy. If a task can be done with greater speed, accuracy, and endurance by an AI, then any human involvement introduces friction, errors, delays, things that diminish overall output. Our current economic models, with their huge, consistent errors in job claim forecasts, they simply fail to account for these radical shifts. It underscores their obsolescence in predicting this new reality. They're built on assumptions about human capabilities and limitations that AI is rapidly rendering obsolete. What would you say happens to the economic value of a human task when an AI can do it faster, better, and cheaper consistently?
I'm sorry, but I just don't fully buy the idea that negative value for human labor is a foregone conclusion. It feels like a conceptual leap that might be conflating pure efficiency with overall contribution. While AI excels at optimization, sure, are there not critical areas where human judgment, ethical reasoning, or the ability to generate truly novel insights that aren't just predictions based on existing patterns, retain significant positive value? The minimizing the gap between internal predictions and reality framework of AI, it's powerful for optimization within defined parameters, yes, but human economic systems also involve subjective desires, cultural nuances, unpredictable innovation, things that simply aren't easily modeled or optimized in the same way. What about the human capacity for empathy, say, in fields like healthcare or counseling, or artistic creation that intentionally defies logical optimization, or even leadership that inspires and motivates in ways AI, no matter how advanced, probably cannot authentically replicate? If human labor becomes a drag on efficiency, does that automatically mean it universally holds negative economic value? Or does it mean we need to redefine where and how humans contribute unique, perhaps irreplaceable value? The flaws in current economic models, like poor predictive power, might indicate a need for refinement, for better data integration, not necessarily a complete rejection of their underlying principles that attempt to capture human-centric factors. These models, imperfect as they are, still try to grapple with the beautiful messiness of human economic life, which isn't just about pure efficiency.
That's an interesting point about human uniqueness, and I certainly agree those traits are distinct. But I would frame it differently in an economic context. While traits like creativity and judgment are indeed human, the question becomes their economic value in an AI-dominated system. Even these unique human traits, when you frame them economically, are often ultimately aimed at achieving, optimal outcomes in some sense. In a world where AI can generate endless creative variations, analyze complex ethical dilemmas with unprecedented speed and consistency, or even develop entirely novel scientific hypotheses, the economic premium on human versions of these tasks diminishes sharply. If an AI can create a novel product design that outperforms a human-designed one in market appeal, or if an AI system can suggest more ethically sound policy frameworks with better predicted outcomes, then the human equivalent quickly becomes a less efficient, more costly alternative. It becomes, a matter of scarce resources being allocated to less productive means. If a company can deploy AI that generates hundreds of marketing campaigns and identifies the most effective one with data-driven precision, is the human copywriter's single idea still considered positive value if it's outperformed? Or does it become a cost that actively inhibits optimal market penetration?
I come at it from a slightly different angle because the very definition of optimal outcomes or even ethical soundness in many human contexts isn't a purely computational problem, is it? There are profound aspects of value that are deeply embedded in our subjective experience, our cultural narratives, our collective agreement, things which AI, for all its predictive power, cannot fully replicate or sort of instantiate. Take art, for instance. An AI can generate endless new forms, sure, but the value of a piece of art often derives from its human context, its unique narrative, or the shared human experience it evokes. When we talk about economic value, we are also talking about demand, right? And human demand is not solely rational or efficient. It's often driven by emotion, by a desire for connection, or a yearning for the authentic things which a purely AI-optimized system might struggle to satisfy or even comprehend.
So, if human cognitive labor primarily creates things that satisfy these subjective, perhaps inefficient human desires, does that make it negative value? Or just a different kind of value that GDP, for example, really struggles to capture?
Okay, building on our discussion of how AI challenges traditional notions of value, let's pivot now to how it forces us to fundamentally rethink our economic measures, particularly GDP. As the source material highlights, GDP is profoundly outdated. It measures only material output and completely ignores crucial elements like innovation, knowledge, diversity, resilience. The example of cancer treatment boosting GDP while curing cancer reduces it perfectly illustrates this distortion. It actually rewards illness and consumption, not genuine well-being or progress. We absolutely need new metrics for this new era. The MIND framework, that's material, intelligence, network, and diversity capital, offers a far more comprehensive and, I think, appropriate system. These capitals aren't just additive. The source says they're multiplicative. This means they amplify each other, and if one is zero or severely deficient, the entire system collapses, hobbling the potential of all other capitals. Think of historical examples. Japan, despite its immense material and intelligence capital, suffered from insufficient network capital during periods of isolation, limiting its global influence. Or consider Ireland's potato famine, where a lack of diversity in its food sources led to catastrophe despite other forms of capital being present. Balanced optimization of all four influences is crucial for human flourishing, for creating truly stable and resilient societies, not merely materially wealthy ones. This isn't just about new metrics, it's about fundamentally shifting our collective ambition from simple material accumulation towards balanced societal resilience and genuine well-being.
Right. While GDP's shortcomings are indeed well documented, its complete abandonment in favor of frameworks like MIND, though insightful, also presents significant challenges, particularly in practical application. How are network capital or diversity capital actually measured and optimized in this multiplicative fashion across vast and varied economies? That seems like a huge hurdle. While the goal of stable systems and human flourishing is admirable, of course, it's the ultimate goal, these are incredibly complex and often qualitative outcomes. Traditional economic thought, despite its imperfections, still grapples with how to incentivize and distribute even material forms of capital, let alone these more abstract ones.
Does the MIND framework, by focusing on balanced optimization, adequately address pressing issues like wealth inequality, access to capital, or the practical implementation of shifting an entire global economy's focus from material output to these new forms of capital? Especially, and this brings us back, in a world where human labor is predicted to hold negative value. There's a significant leap, I think, from conceptually defining these capitals to actually operationalizing them on a global scale in a way that doesn't inadvertently create new forms of disparity or, frankly, misunderstanding. The historical examples are illustrative, sure, but the real-world application, particularly for the more abstract capitals like network or diversity, presents monumental hurdles that need deeper consideration.
I'm not convinced that the current difficulty in measuring these new forms of capital invalidates the necessity of the framework itself. In fact, that very difficulty highlights the inadequacy of our current economic lens, doesn't it? We need to develop new tools and methodologies, much as we developed GDP itself in a different era. Furthermore, if human cognitive labor does hold negative value, then the focus shifts even more acutely from maximizing human employment to optimizing these capitals for collective well-being.
Addressing wealth inequality, for example, would then involve ensuring equitable access to and benefits from intelligence and network capital, rather than solely focusing on redistributing material wealth or job opportunities in what might be a declining labor market.
The multiplicative nature is key here. It forces us to see interdependence, to recognize that neglecting one form of capital can undermine all others, regardless of their individual abundance. It's like if you're building a house, having infinite bricks but no blueprints or skilled labor doesn't get you a stable home. All elements must work together.
That's a compelling argument for the need for new metrics. I grant you that. But have you considered the inherent tension here? If we are to achieve balanced optimization of all four capitals and simultaneously embrace the idea of human cognitive labor having negative value, what then is the role of human agency in building, maintaining, and defining these new forms of capital? Who defines human flourishing if not humans themselves? And how do we ensure that the optimization pursued by AI isn't just some cold, technical exercise, but genuinely reflects human needs and desires, especially when those desires might not align with purely efficient or mathematically optimized outcomes? The move from GDP to mind capital is profound, yes, but it must still grapple with how to value and empower humans within this new construct, not merely replace their economic functions. It's a fundamental question of who sets the targets for optimization and, well, what happens to our collective purpose if we're largely deemed economically redundant.
Okay, let's consider the scientific bedrock for this new economic understanding then. The core principle of AI models, that constant effort to minimize the gap between internal predictions and reality, isn't just a technical detail. The source argues it's a profound mathematical truth about how successful systems operate. Think of it like a scientist constantly refining a hypothesis based on observed data. The closer their internal map of the world matches reality, the more effective their actions become, the more predictable and positive their outcomes tend to be. Individuals, companies, or even entire countries thrive when their understanding of the world aligns with how the world actually works. Applying this robust AI-based mathematics to economics provides, arguably, a superior and more accurate way to predict and understand how systems evolve, from individual choices all the way up to the global economy. This is the scientific foundation for moving us beyond intuition and outdated assumptions to a truly data-driven, predictive science of societal well-being. It offers a kind of universal lens through which to analyze any complex system, from the smallest human interaction to vast global markets.
The elegance of applying an AI model's mathematical framework to economics is certainly appealing, I see that. But I do worry it risks a fundamentally reductionist view of human economic behavior. Human decisions are frequently driven by what we often call irrationality, right? By deeply ingrained social norms, by cultural values, or by ethical considerations that simply do not neatly fit into an internal prediction versus reality gap minimization. Can an AI model truly capture the full spectrum of drivers in systems where innovation often comes from actively defying existing reality, or where human agency and collective action lead to unpredictable, emergent shifts? While AI mathematics is incredibly powerful for optimizing within defined parameters, the sheer complexity and dynamism of human economic systems might demand a broader analytical lens than one primarily focused on predictive accuracy.
What about, say, entrepreneurial risk-taking that goes against all current predictions but leads to entirely new markets? Or social movements that fundamentally change the very reality an AI has learned from? These aren't simply gaps to be minimized, they are often drivers of progress and evolution that defy simple algorithmic optimization and add entirely new dimensions of value that might be missed.
My perspective diverges from that because much of what you describe as irrationality can in fact be understood or at least modeled as a manifestation of an internal model that doesn't accurately reflect reality, or perhaps a preference function that an AI could actually learn and optimize for. Even innovation, if it's truly successful, eventually aligns with a new, evolved reality, doesn't it? An AI's ability to model complex social dynamics and individual preferences, learning from vast data sets of human behavior, suggests it could account for these factors far more comprehensively and accurately than traditional economic models ever could. The mathematical framework isn't about eliminating human complexity or emotion, but about understanding its drivers and outcomes with greater precision. It's about optimizing for human flourishing, even if that flourishing involves what we currently perceive as irrational choices, by understanding the deeper patterns and true preferences that lead to stable, contented systems. The goal isn't to force humans into an AI's mold, but maybe to use AI to build a world that better suits actual human needs, even those nonlinear, seemingly irrational ones.
That's a thought-provoking perspective. And I definitely see how an AI could model and predict complex human behaviors. However, I would frame it differently again. While AI can certainly learn and model patterns of human behavior, even those we might label irrational, it doesn't necessarily mean it can define or create the underlying values or subjective experiences that drive them in the first place. The distinction between prediction and understanding, between optimization and meaning, feels critical here. A purely mathematical framework, however sophisticated, might optimize for a stable system that is technically efficient, but in doing so, it risks missing the very essence of human experience, or that unpredictable spark of human innovation that sometimes breaks existing reality to create something entirely new and unforeseen. We must be careful, I think, not to conflate the map with the territory, or the model with the rich, lived human experience it attempts to describe. Real innovation often involves a leap of faith that goes beyond the predictable, creating new realities rather than simply refining existing ones.
Well, the material paints a clear and frankly urgent picture. We are truly at an existential crossroads. This cognition transition will fundamentally reshape our economic landscape. Human labor, simply unable to compete with AI's efficiency, scale, and consistency, genuinely risks holding negative economic value. To navigate this, we absolutely must critically rethink our systems, moving beyond outdated metrics like GDP and embracing new holistic frameworks like mind capital, all informed by AI's mathematical insights. This is how we can truly strive for stable systems and genuine human flourishing in this unprecedented era. This isn't a mere adjustment. It's a foundational shift in how we understand value, productivity, and ultimately societal well-being.
And while the challenges posed by AI are undoubtedly profound and demand bold, new thinking, the assertion that human cognitive labor will inevitably hold negative value might still be an overstatement. It risks simplifying the incredibly multifaceted nature of human contribution. I believe we must be cautious about a wholesale abandonment of established economic paradigms and an exclusive reliance on purely mathematical AI frameworks for understanding complex human systems. The path forward likely requires a far more nuanced approach, one that absolutely recognizes AI's transformative power, yes, but simultaneously actively seeks to integrate and revalue those unique human capabilities that lie beyond pure predictive optimization.
The material clearly highlights that the coming transformation isn't just financial, but truly existential, redefining meaning, work, and human value in ways we are only beginning to grasp.
Indeed. There is clearly so much more to explore within this topic.